Hey there, my name is Ryan Dossey, and in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through how I flipped or wholetailed a house that I never even bought for a $30,000 profit. Let me show you how to do this. Let's dive right in. I've done a couple videos for you guys on this virtual wholesaling structure that we're using. I'll link to the For Dummies super simple one above. So if you're not watching this on YouTube, you should follow us on YouTube so you don't miss out on that kind of stuff. We kind of do this with these videos that are a little bit more in depth. I totally could package this into a course. I'm literally flipping houses I've never seen in markets I've never been to, which is, pretty sexy if you ask me. All I'm going to ask, if you find these helpful, like the video and subscribe. We're trying to grow the channel here and appreciate you assisting us with doing that. So this particular property came in through our website through organic SEO. Basically, somebody in Topeka, Kansas Googled sell my house fast or we buy houses companies, something like that, and landed on one of my websites. They filled out the form that went over to my employee, Angelique, who is an absolute stud. I'm trying to get her to do one of these videos with me, but she doesn't love being on camera. But we'll get there sooner or later. So the general premise of what we're doing with these, we're utilizing PropStream to run comps, which I'll link to kind of how we do that above. And we're trying to virtually come up with what a property would sell for and how much work it needs, all over the phone without physically putting our eyes on it. I realize that sounds a little bit intimidating, but really it's just a matter of you keep pushing things forward and asking questions and asking more questions. And I'm not going to lie to you, the first couple were really, really weird. How do I know if I'm correct? So I'm going to kind of just walk you through our process on this a little bit in case it's something that you want to do. So this particular property was in Topeka, Kansas. You can see it here. We'll start with the nice listing pictures. We listed it for $131,900. Ended up actually taking an offer of $137,000 cash. It was a trust that was purchasing the property. I'm assuming they're planning on housing family members, grandkids, something like that in the property. But they paid cash for $137,000. We did retrade with them after a little bit of an inspection. So we ended up getting right at $135,000. Not too shabby at all, especially when you see here what we paid for it. So kind of a nicer, I call these vinyl village-y properties, right? It's got an attached 2-car garage, some hardwood throughout, some light grays and blues, tile, kind of an open concept, if you will, right? Most overused cliche phrase in real estate. Nicer kind of bedrooms, bathrooms, but there were kind of some challenges with this particular property. I'm going to show you our whole inspection and kind of show you some of the things we had to do and figure out with this property. So you can see here, that doesn't look great on the foundation, right? Kind of these long stripes across it. So we actually did end up having to have a structural engineer come out and take a look at the property and make sure that there wasn't any structural concerns on this one, and it ended up being fine. Stuff had been repaired correctly, but I don't know about you, if I'm looking to buy a house, that's a pretty big turnoff. So you're going to see kind of throughout this deal that there's several places that we could have potentially just thrown in the towel, especially after this inspection, where we could have just been yeah, no, this is too messy. This one isn't for us. So this particular property, we used a lease option structure. So how this works, I'm basically renting the house from somebody for a set price, and then I have the option to buy that property from them at a later date for a predetermined dollar amount. So you can see here, we ended up negotiating an option purchase price of $87,225. Put $1,000 down in EMD. I will leave this here kind of up on the screen for a little bit. That way you can kind of take a look at it if you want, if it's something that you want to copy. And then we had it set that we were basically just going to cover their holding costs. The people who owned it free and clear. So this was a really, really good deal for us. in that our monthly like burn rate was only $315. I couldn't raise private money that cheap, right? So $315 was what the kind of monthly holding cost was. And this one actually took us a pretty long time. You can see right here on the screen, we didn't buy, we started renting the property back on November 1st of last year. The reason why this one took so long is kind of like I alluded to earlier. We had a lot of kind of those like questions of what do we do with this? How do we handle this? What do we want to do with that? We were trying to get like work done remotely from people that we've never met. So let me dive into the inspection with you guys and show you kind of what was wrong with this thing. All right, so here we have our home inspection pulled up. Nice, smiling family on their cover photo. And I'm not gonna go through like all of this line by line because it's 25 pages and this video gets super boring. But I just want to show you kind of some of the highlights that came up here. So, your typical inspection-y like knick-knack stuff, like, oh, this needs some sealant. There should be foam there, a couple bricks missing, right? Some of that kind of stuff. Concrete, a little bit of a gap, nothing too sketchy. Where we started to potentially run into some issues was with the roofing. They even said they couldn't accurately determine the number of layers of roofing. So it's kind of an interesting setup where you had the house and then the garage, but the roof above the garage was a flat roof, which can cause a lot of problems. And then there was actually a door from one of the bedrooms out onto the roof, I guess if you wanted to go smoke cigarettes or something. So kind of an odd setup. And then on top of that, different colors of shingles. We had kind of the typical asphalt and then also like the rubber flat roof. So a little interesting, more kind of typical inspection knick-knack stuff like the gutters had leaves in them. It was fall in the Midwest, right? What do you expect? So, random flashing, some small cracks and things of that nature. They had concerns with some stuff in the basement as well with kind of regards to that foundation. But this was one of the other big scary ones was it looks like there's mold looks like there's biological growth in the master bathroom and the hallway next to it. Now, we ended up finding out it wasn't actually from a water leak. It was due to the fact that there was no exhaust fan at all in the bathroom and they would just like keep the windows closed after a shower. So we initially thought, oh no, the thing needs a new roof. It's leaking. There's all kinds of problems. If you're kind of getting the sense through this video, there's a lot of points that we could have been like, this one's too risky for us being virtual, kind of us being remote. But what we decided to do instead was like, well, let's figure these things out. So normally how this process works, we're getting a deal. We're having a really detailed conversation with the owner about kind of what kind of shape it's in, what it needs. And we're constantly learning new things, right? This owner was like, oh, the house doesn't need much. One of our new questions we ask is there any mold or anything that looks like mold present anywhere, right? So making sure we're finding these kinds of things out before we pay for an inspection, which just cost us a couple $100. We came up with the roof. So we had a roofing contractor go out and take a look at it. And they said, hey, yeah, it probably needs a new one, but it's fine for now. So kind of had that evaluated, had somebody come out and look at the foundation who said, yeah, okay, hey, this looks fine. And what we ultimately decided was we got this property for $87,000. And we had a realtor go out and give us a BPO, which stands for like a broker's price opinion. Again, something we paid I think $200-300 for, where they'll go out and actually they tried to like estimate repair costs and stuff, which I would not take their advice on that. But the big thing we wanted was the value estimate. What do they think this thing is worth? How fast do they think it'll sell? So they came back to us and said, as is, if you don't fix anything, we think within 30 days you can sell it for $127,000. We're like, wow, okay, that's pretty appealing. On the repaired side, we could get anywhere from, $140,000 to $150,000. So what we ultimately ended up deciding was to replace and repair the kind of mold covered ceiling and address some other kind of odds and ends. I'll show you our actual like financials, kind of what went into this thing here in a second. But we used the kind of local expert's opinion of what this thing was worth to verify the comps that we ran in PropStream. We used the local expert, who is the inspector, to verify what the seller had told us about the condition, just to make sure that we hadn't missed anything, or that they hadn't like neglected anything. Like, oh yeah, by the way, there's mold in there, right? So we ended up getting the mold fixed, threw this thing on the market, and it absolutely flew. We had 4 or 5 offers that came in. Ultimately, we ended up going with a buyer for right at $135,000, like I mentioned earlier. Historically, because I've used this structure several times in this particular business that kind of like plays with these, we've had to actually buy the house prior to closing. So we've kind of been able to use like the lease bit to lower our holding costs, not have to raise private money. And then we've had to like buy the property, sit on it for a week or two while we then resell it. In this case, we actually didn't have to do that. The title company let us like double close the deal. I think what allowed us to do that was the fact that they were a cash buyer. There was no mortgage or kind of lenders involved. But we never actually had to buy the house other than like the actual wholesale closing. So all in all, we had right at $2,100 out in holding costs for like their $300 a month plus utilities. We spent $4,200 on repairs. We spent $300 on cleaning. Our inspection was $449. Our BPO was $245. Out of closing, we had another $5,900 come out. But realistically, I mean, you're talking, I maybe had, let's do some quick math, 23. I realistically spent $3,000 out of pocket to pull back in $30,000. I don't know about you, but as an investor, I'm pretty dang happy with that ROI, right? What is that? Is that a 10x, right? It's huge. So that's kind of the overview of how this structure works, the ins and outs of this actual deal that we just did, that we literally just got paid on, on Friday, actually, while I was in New Orleans. So I'm out chilling with my family on vacation, and our entity ended up making over $30,000. So that is kind of in a nutshell how we flipped this house that I never technically owned, making over 10 times the amount of money that I had into this deal. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty sexy, pretty cool. Hopefully you found this helpful and enlightening. I'm hoping that as I kind of work through my like discomfort with these kinds of deals and kind of show you guys like the how-to, that you're able to learn from how we're doing this to go do these kinds of deals yourself instead of shying away from them. If you found this helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. As always, I appreciate you telling your friends. It's kind of like how I raise private money. I've always found that my best source of new capital is referrals from old capital. Best way we've grown the channel so far is you reaching out to buddies of yours and being like, hey, I think you might find this helpful. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me. Feel free to drop any questions you have down in the comments below. I actually personally read and reply to all of those for now. I imagine we'll be able to do that for some time to come. Talk to you guys next time.